Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. In my short time, my brief remarks, I'd like to touch on really two key themes. One is the industrial transformation and the future of work, quite a big topic. And the second is the enormous contribution being made by the university sector here in South Australia. Now, we stand today on the cusp of, perhaps even the midst, of what is the fourth industrial transformation, industrial revolution. The first brought steam power, the mechanization of production. The second, electric power, mass production, and the combustion engine. The third, computers and automation. Of course, we all recognize that that revolution has been gathering pace at an incredible rate, and most observers now recognize that we're entering a fourth industrial revolution, one of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and cyber physical systems, things that will once again transform the world of work. We hear relentlessly that today's jobs are under threat. They're under threat that humans will be replaced by machines. A recent report on the future of jobs from the World Economic Forum at Davos predicted that between 2018 and 2022, over the course of a mere 4 years, 75 million jobs will be lost to machines and to AI. 75 million. It's a massive impact in a very, very short period of time. Now, what you don't tend to hear in the headlines is that in that very self-same report from Davos, the prediction that there will be the creation of 133 million new jobs in the same period. So a net gain, in fact, of 58 million. So while Industry 4.0 represents a threat to certain jobs, it's also a massive opportunity. But what are the new jobs and what are the new skills that are required? Many future jobs will be in the emerging in-demand areas, of course, including the obvious skills, the AI, the artificial intelligence, the big data, the process automation, robotics, information security, blockchain, the list goes on. But others will reflect the changing employment types as industries adopt new technologies and adapt to their existing workforce to new, higher value-adding activities. Indeed, 38% of companies who were surveyed for that Davos report expect to increase their workforce as automation enhances productivity. But all those businesses recognize what is a growing skills instability. The half-life of learned skills being substantially reduced. This follows a report from Deloitte a couple of years ago who found that the useful half-life of a learned skill is dropping and is now around 5 years. Now compare that to graduates of old who would graduate from university and enjoy a 30 or 40 year career based on the skills that they had learned. So really the greatest challenge emerging is the changing nature of jobs and the skills that are required. And the key message from the Davos report is that some skills no longer have currency, others are in short supply, and on-the-job training and upskilling will be an ever-present feature of the future of work. The skills in decline include data input, data processing, administration, manual dexterity, endurance, precision, management of financial and even material resources, coordination and time management. Now, to be fair, if those are the things we don't need, it fuels the old adage that, frankly, if a job can be done by a robot, it probably should be. But what are the skills that are trending upwards? They are, of course, those high-level technical skills, the AI, the cyber security. They're much in demand. You'll pay an awful lot for them, but you probably can't afford not to. Yet one must also recognize that the half-life of those skills is also likely to be limited as technology races mercilessly onwards. But employers' survey says that most employers recognize this reskilling imperative and larger employers expect to meet much of that internally through on-the-job training. But at least half of employers expect to utilize external training organizations, including universities and the likes of VET. Now, we see a role for universities in the future in upskilling, perhaps through a new breed of short, intensive courses to bridge skills gaps. But interestingly, the Davos report also identifies a number of human skills that are in very high demand. They include critical thinking and analysis, creativity, innovation, reasoning, problem solving, ideation, leadership and social influence, and emotional intelligence. And the vast majority of employers surveyed are seeking to employ staff with those skills. And interestingly, they're actually skills that don't appear to have the same shortening half-life as technical skills. Now, universities have always been places that have developed those particular skills alongside technical prowess, and that's in large part because those skills are all fundamental to the concept of what we call research. And for me, some of the most important questions that one can ever ask are those ungoogleable ones. Questions to which there is as yet no answer. They are the root of new discoveries, the root of new knowledge, and indeed competitive advantage. Universities are places where ungoogleable questions are addressed every single day. It's the basis of the research that we do, it's the basis of the research skills we seek to instill in our graduates. And it's probably the single most important element of a university in education, which in my view means that research-intensive universities will prevail against all comers in any future clash of education providers. South Australia is fortunate to have 3 strong, successful, research-intensive and separate universities. At Flinders, we've recently completed a major restructure. We've got a simpler, much more collaborative structure, one that's far more agile into the future. And last week I announced a $200 million investment over 5 years, $100 million into educational programs and $100 million into research. They'll ensure that we grow and further enhance our capacity to deliver the skills, the graduates, and the research outcomes that our economy needs. Now, of course, in terms of the suitability of the skills that our graduates have, one key feature that certainly all of the universities here are engaged in our work placements. And 18,000 Flinders students went out on work placements last year. So if any of you were partnering with us taking some of our students, then it's a huge thank you. But also, we are seeking to embed entrepreneurial thinking across all of our degree programs. Students studying any subject will have the opportunity to learn and develop the skills required in fast-changing modern businesses, or even to start their own company. And so far, our New Venture Institute has helped to kick off 340 startup companies. And I'm pleased to say our New Venture Institute was actually ranked the top university-led incubator in the Asia-Pacific region. The Marshall Government's commitment to Lot 14 as a hub for entrepreneurs is most welcome. And we look forward to working with the Chief Entrepreneur, Jim Wally, who I saw earlier today here at the meeting, and also members of the Entrepreneurship Advisory Board, in order to ensure that we can integrate our activities to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem here in South Australia that's much greater than the sum of its parts. And I'm also pleased to see that the Marshall Government and Minister Gardner are recognising the importance of entrepreneurial educational training by embedding it in a number of high schools across the state. If I now turn to my second theme, the contribution of universities to the state economy, make no mistake, right here, right now, our public universities, your universities, are making a huge and substantial economic contribution to the state. We represent, the 3 public universities represent a combined annual turnover of $2 billion. We're major purchasers of local goods and services, and we employ thousands of staff. At Flinders last year, 6,000 at Flinders alone. There are 83,000 students currently studying across those 3 universities, and since 2001, we've educated more than 250,000 South Australians, over 100,000 international students. We're key attractors of talent. More than 90% of young South Australians remain in this state for their tertiary education, and we attract 10% of our students from interstate. We also attract large and growing numbers of highly talented individuals from overseas to come to live and to study here in South Australia. Now, we all know that our aging demographics represent a challenge for the state, and I, for one, am delighted to hear that the Marshall government has a focus on population and jobs growth as key priorities. And as the leader of a university that's doubled international student numbers over the past 4 years, I'm pleased that we're contributing to what Stephen Marshall has described as a core element of the government's population growth strategy. Deloitte Access Economics has found that there are 19,000 international students currently studying in South Australia, contributing $1.3 billion annually to the state economy. A very large part of that is spent out there across the economy in terms of accommodation, transport, consumer spending, etc. It means that every 3 international students that study in this state create 1 full-time equivalent job. Add to this the tourism dollars that follow when parents and families of international students come to visit to see how they're getting along, and the overall economic contribution of our public universities exceeds $3 billion per annum. Now, while the financial contribution from international education is tangible and enormous, the intangible benefits are perhaps greater. While some international students will choose to settle here, others return home, and they take with them a strong, lifelong affinity for South Australia. While here, those students offer us, a lens through which you might view market opportunities, especially if you take them on a placement. But those who return home create networks and cultural bridges that can connect our countries and our businesses long into the future. And if you need any further convincing, just consider that a University of Adelaide alumnus, Tony Tan Keng Yang, was president of Singapore for 7 years. A Flinders alumnus, Professor Pratikno, is currently the 2IC in the cabinet in the Indonesian government as state secretary. These are deep, deep connections with our partner nations in this region that are of incalculable value. And I have to say, every time I meet Professor Pratikno, he speaks publicly of his experiences at Flinders and in Adelaide and South Australia. He chokes up every single time. It's astonishing the affinity that man has for this state. So in conclusion, the world of work is changing. There are many challenges ahead, but more opportunities. Governments, industry, universities, and indeed individuals must all play their role in meeting the reskilling imperative. Meanwhile, strong universities attract talent, develop a skilled workforce, and drive economic growth. We need to work ever more closely with government and with industries to create the synergies that will enable our state to seize the opportunities available in the changing world of work. Thank you very much.